After 3 years of marriage, I was finally pregnant. I was heading to my husband's workplace with a lunchbox in hand to give him the good news. However, I ended up being mistaken by his secretary as a mistress. She threw the food I had prepared on me, tore off my clothes, and beat me until I had a miscarriage. "You're just a maid. How dare you seduce Mr. Gates and carry his child? Today I'll make sure you suffer the consequences of being a mistress," said the secretary. After her attack, she went to see my husband, seeking a reward. "Mr. Gates, I took care of a maid who was trying to seduce you. How do you plan to reward me?" she asked arrogantly. Lately, I hadn't had much of an appetite and vomited everything I ate, so I went to the hospital for a checkup. When the doctor informed me that I was pregnant, I couldn't help but shed tears of joy. My husband and I had been childhood friends and got married after graduating from college, but we hadn't been able to have a child. He always tried to console me by saying that pregnancy should happen naturally and that perhaps our baby was waiting for the right moment. Finally, that moment had come. "Ma'am, you're already 4 months pregnant. The fetus is healthy, but you must avoid any external impact," the doctor told me with a kind smile. I gently stroked my slightly swollen belly and felt full of hope. For a long time, my periods had been irregular, and the weight I had gained around my waist I had attributed to overeating. When I got home, I couldn't contain my excitement. I prepared a meal and decided to take it to my husband personally to share the good news. With the lunchbox in hand, I entered the Gates Group building. As I was about to open the door to my husband's office, a glamorous woman stopped me. "What are you doing?" she asked coldly, looking at me with disdain. I showed her the box and said, "I came to deliver lunch to Simon." In front of others, I didn't like to call him directly my husband. She sighed with relief and sarcastically said, "Oh, so you're just a maid. I'm Lily, Mr. Gates' chief secretary. Give me the box and leave." I shook my head. "I'm not a maid. I want to deliver the lunch personally to Mr. Gates." "Please let me in," I replied. As soon as I finished speaking, the woman's rage erupted. She snatched the lunchbox from me and said, "Who do you think you are? You're just a maid, and you think you can seduce Mr. Gates." She dragged me into a meeting room, slammed the door shut, and slapped me hard. My face instantly swelled, and I fell to the ground. Before I could react, she kicked me in the head. My first instinct was to protect my belly. I didn't care about anything else, only the baby I was carrying. Lily opened the lunchbox and threw its contents over my head. The hot soup I had prepared burned my scalp, but I didn't dare move for fear of hurting the baby. After humiliating me with the food, she began to hit me harder. In the end, I couldn't bear it anymore and screamed, "I'm Simon's wife." Suddenly, everything went silent. The silence in the room was sharp, too heavy to ignore. I expected Simon to come running to my side, to hug me, for his anger to fall on Lily. However, to my surprise, the first thing he did was take a few steps towards Lily, who was still trembling, her hands dirty and tears running down her face. He looked at her, his eyes filled with confusion and something that seemed like empathy. "Lily, are you okay?" Simon asked, his voice low, almost comforting. My body shook at his words. I stood there, covered in food, humiliated, hurt, and, worst of all, feeling that something was terribly wrong inside me. My baby. I had protected him with all my strength during the attack, but the pain in my belly warned me that something terrible had happened. Even so, Simon seemed more concerned about his secretary. "Simon." My voice came out trembling, but full of rage. "Didn't you hear what she did to me?"
"I'm pregnant."
I placed my hand on my belly, the pain intensifying. And, because of her, our baby might be in danger. Finally, he looked at me, his eyes showing confusion. "Pregnant?" He seemed unable to believe it. "Why didn't you tell me before?" "I came here precisely to tell you." My voice shook with emotion and frustration. "But before I could even speak to you, your secretary attacked me. And now," my voice faltered, and I felt despair taking over me. "Now I need to go to the hospital to make sure everything is okay with the baby." Simon hesitated, looking at me, then at Lily, who was still softly sobbing, her hands trembling. What he said next shattered my heart into 1,000 pieces. I don't think Lily did this on purpose. She probably got confused. His voice was low, almost defensive, as if he were trying to justify the unjustifiable.
What?
My head was spinning. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She beat me, Simon. She threw hot food at me, kicked me, and humiliated me. I'm carrying your child, and you're defending her? He ran a hand through his hair, clearly uncomfortable. But still, he didn't look directly at me. I'm not saying what she did was right, but you know how these things can be. She probably thought you were a threat, someone trying to get close to me in the wrong way.
She was protecting me.
Protecting you? The shock was turning my anger into something almost uncontrollable. You're telling me that my pregnancy and the baby we've been waiting for means so little to you that you're justifying her actions? Before he could respond, I felt a sharp pain in my belly. Desperation surged, and I knew I needed to go to the hospital immediately. I can't stay here, I murmured, my voice almost failing. I'm going to the hospital to see if our baby is still alive. I looked at him, hoping, begging for him to come with me. But he didn't move. Lily was still sobbing in the background, and his choice was clear. I left the room, my heart broken, but with an urgency that outweighed any emotional pain.
The baby.
I had to save him. At the hospital, the doctor quickly ran tests, but the look on his face already said it all. I'm so sorry, ma'am, he started, but I couldn't hear the rest. My world collapsed at that moment. The baby I had dreamed of, the one we had both waited for so long, was gone. My body trembled, but it was anger, betrayal, that consumed me completely. I wanted to scream, to destroy everything around me. Back at home, I felt suffocated by the silence. There was no call from Simon, no message, nothing. He knew I was at the hospital, and yet he didn't show up. I was alone, dealing with the loss of our child, while he was probably still at work, alongside the woman who had destroyed our lives. I couldn't bear it any longer. The pain turned into fury, and that fury transformed into an unrelenting decision. I wasn't going to wait. I was going to confront him, and he would have to face me. With determined steps, I returned to the Gates Group building. It didn't matter that the doctor had recommended complete rest. I couldn't just lie down and cry. I needed answers, I needed justice. When I entered the office, my vision blurred with anger. Simon was sitting at his desk, with Lily standing beside him, as if nothing had happened. The sight of them made me sick to my soul. Without thinking twice, I grabbed the first object I saw, a vase of flowers, and hurled it against the wall. It shattered into 1,000 pieces, but the sound was muffled by my voice. How dare you? I screamed, my voice hoarse from holding back tears. Our baby is dead, and you're here, as if nothing happened, defending the woman who caused this. Simon quickly stood up, trying to calm the situation. Please calm down. Let's talk. Talk. I interrupted him, feeling a fury I couldn't contain. Talk. I lost our child. I told you I was pregnant. I begged you to listen to me, and you did nothing. And now you're defending this woman? Lily stepped back, clearly frightened by my outburst, but Simon remained strangely calm, almost cold. It wasn't her fault, he said, and those words struck me like a knife. She didn't mean to. It was a terrible misunderstanding, but she didn't know what she was doing. Didn't know? The shock left me speechless. She beat me until I lost our child. And you're still defending her? How can you? How can you even look at her after this? Simon ran a hand over his face, sighing. I know you're hurt, but she's my employee. I can't just throw her under the bus because you're angry. She did something terrible, but we can't forget it was a mistake. My legs gave way and I almost collapsed. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My world was falling apart, and the man I loved, the father of the child I had lost, was more concerned with protecting his secretary than taking care of me. I felt the tears start to fall, but it wasn't just sadness. It was a rage so deep it burned inside me. You're telling me that my pain, the loss of our child, means so little to you that you'd rather defend a woman who destroyed our family? Simon hesitated, but finally responded in a low, controlled voice. I'm just saying it wasn't her fault. I couldn't take it anymore. That was the last straw. With my heart shattered, I turned towards the door, determined never to look back again. His words echoed in my mind. It wasn't her fault.
How could he say that?
How could he choose her over me? Over our baby? I walked out of the office, knowing that something irreparable had broken inside me. I left Simon's office with a heavy heart and a mind spinning, but with one thing clear: I couldn't let this go unpunished. My baby was dead, and the woman who killed him with her own hands was still working side by side with my husband, without facing any consequences. He might have been willing to forgive her, but I wasn't. Not after everything she put me through. I decided that if Simon wasn't going to take action, I would. I took a taxi and went straight to the police station. When I arrived, I filed a report against Lily. I explained everything in detail, from the moment she confronted me at the office to the beating that caused me to lose my baby. The officer who took my statement seemed horrified, and as I recounted the story, I felt like I was regaining some control over the situation. I knew the process would be slow, but just knowing she would face justice was already a relief. That night, I went home alone. Simon didn't call, didn't text, nothing. I spent hours lying in bed, anger and grief swirling in my heart, until exhaustion finally took over. The next morning, as I tried to gather the strength to start the day, my phone rang. Simon's name flashed on the screen, but before I could decide whether to answer, the call ended. Soon after, multiple messages started coming in, all from the same source. Pick up. I need to talk to you now. What did you do? I just read them without replying until the next notification appeared. Come to the office.
Now.
I took a deep breath and prepared myself. Something told me this wasn't going to be good. Arriving at the building, I barely made it into the room before hearing Simon shout, "What did you do?" He was furious. Suddenly, I felt transported to another world, where the man I had once loved was now a stranger to me. The police were in the office, and Lily was being handcuffed, crying and calling out for Simon. "How could you do this?" He continued, glaring at me in anger. "You really called the police? It wasn't necessary. You're overreacting." He gestured, clearly trying to control his emotions. "Lily never meant to hurt you. She made a mistake. It's your fault too, for not saying anything." Those words hit me like a knife. Was he blaming me? My body froze for a moment, and I felt like everything I thought I understood was starting to fall into place, but in a completely different way. Every gesture, every word from Simon, his attempts to justify Lily, it all made sense now. Slowly, the puzzle was coming together in my mind. They're having an affair, I thought. The idea began to solidify. That exaggerated protection, the way he cared about her before even asking how I was, there was something more. I looked at Simon, feeling a coldness I had never felt before. "Simon," my voice came out low, but firm. "You're having an affair with her, aren't you?" He froze for a second, as if trying to find the right words. I saw his face harden, as if he was about to deny it. But after a long pause, his shoulders slumped. He hesitated, then quietly murmured, "Yes." Those 3 letters echoed in the room, and I felt my heart shatter. I knew. Deep down, I always knew, but hearing it out loud made it all feel so much more real. Simon, the man I had dreamed of building a family with, the man I had shared my life with for so many years, was having an affair with the woman who had destroyed our future. The anger boiled inside me, but instead of exploding, I felt a chilling calm take over. I knew what I had to do. "I'm filing for divorce," I said, each word coming out with a firmness that surprised even me. "And I never want you to look at me again. Never come near me again." Simon opened his mouth to speak, but I didn't give him the chance. "There's nothing more to say, Simon. It's over." I turned and walked out of the office, feeling a mix of relief and sadness. The moment I crossed that door, a part of me had been broken forever, but another part, stronger, was beginning to rise. I immediately contacted a lawyer. I explained the entire situation and asked to begin divorce proceedings and, of course, ensure that I got half of Simon's assets. If he thought he could walk away from this unscathed, he was very wrong. The months that followed were difficult. Court hearings, the pressure of the divorce, and the constant feeling of betrayal wore me down. But by the end of the process, I got what I was entitled to: half of everything. The verdict was harsh for Simon, and seeing him face the consequences of his actions gave me a sense of justice. Finally, after months of struggle, the divorce was finalized, and I left that relationship with my head held high, determined to rebuild my life. There was no more room for Simon, for Lily, or for that pain. I decided that never again would I let someone like him have the power to hurt me. That chapter of my life was closed, and I felt ready to start anew, without ever hearing Simon's name again. Now, with a new life ahead of me, I felt stronger than ever. What I lost would never come back, but what I gained in courage, in strength, was something no one could ever take away from me. I had started over, and I would never look back. Even though I have moved on with my life, I was never able to fully recover from the loss of my baby. The pain of what could have been still haunts me in moments of silence. Sometimes, when I saw a mother with her young child, I found myself imagining what my child would have been like, how they would have grown, the sound of their laughter, the sparkle in their eyes. I knew I couldn't change the past, but the emptiness left by the loss was always there, an invisible mark I carried with me all these years. With time, my life began to take a new direction. I dedicated myself to my work, reconnected with friends I had lost during the chaos of the divorce, and tried to find peace in the small things of everyday life. I rebuilt myself in the best way I could. But the grief for that baby never completely left me. I learned to live with it, like a constant shadow that, though discreet, never truly disappeared. It was only after a few years that something unexpected happened. I met a man. A good man, kind and patient. Different from Simon in every way. I met him through mutual friends, and at first, I was cautious. My heart was still scarred, and I was afraid to open up again, to trust. But he, with his patience and kindness, never pressured me. He showed me that there was still room for love, for trust, even after so much pain. Time passed, and with it, our relationship grew stronger. And then, something I never thought would happen again happened. I was pregnant. When the doctor confirmed the news, I felt such a mix of emotions that I cried. There was joy, of course, but there was also fear. I feared that somehow, tragedy would strike again. But this man, my new partner, was by my side every step of the way, assuring me that this time would be different. He supported me, comforted me in moments of insecurity, and, most importantly, gave me the strength to believe that I deserved to be happy again. The months of pregnancy were tense, but also full of hope. With each ultrasound, every movement of the baby in my belly, I felt a deep connection with that new life growing inside me. And, as painful as it was to admit, I still felt the absence of the baby I had lost. That emotional scar was still there. Some nights, I found myself thinking of him, imagining what it would be like to have them both, side by side. Finally, the day arrived. After a long wait, I gave birth to a beautiful baby boy. When they placed him in my arms for the first time, I felt a peace I hadn't felt in a long time. He was perfect. His tiny hands, his curious eyes, everything about him was a miracle. It was as if, for a moment, all the pain I had carried over the years had dissipated. I cried tears of joy, but also of longing, of mourning for what I had lost. This new baby brought light into my life, and with him a new hope. My heart still carries scars from the past, and I will always feel the absence of the first baby, the one I never got to hold. But somehow, the love for my new child doesn't replace the pain. It simply accommodates it, teaching me that it's possible to have hope and move forward, even while carrying the shadows of what has been lost. Today, I am the mother of a wonderful little boy, and despite everything, I am at peace. I still think about the baby I lost, and I will always carry him with me, in my heart. But now I know that life can indeed give us second chances. With my new partner and my child, I have found a happiness I never thought possible. The pain of the past doesn't disappear, but today it exists alongside the joy of a new life, a new story.